given the balance of my life as a slave. I'd been born into slavery, where unquestionable loyalty and devotion were demanded, and resistance was violently suppressed. I'd been destined to endure a heinous system and was relegated to a servile position by virtue of the color of my skin. But that night, I preferred to stare death in the face or be dragged through Hades than to return to captivity and life with an evil woman who delighted in my being debased, being given to her as a wedding gift, like fine china or a knitted blanket, was a mortal wound I could not endure or permit. Hurry, Ona, the ship is waiting. I obeyed my command as an owl hooted overhead. I glanced upward only to stumble in the process. I righted my step and drew my cloak closer about me, despite the tepidness of the evening. The air was thick with warmth, and perhaps my nerve-wracking tension. Sweat trickled beneath my arms. My head felt somewhat dizzy, yet I couldn't decrease my pace or abandon the possibility of freedom and fully living. Noticing the slightest change in the atmosphere, my heart galloped with relief. The air had cooled. The brackishness of the water was pronounced. I'd neared the neighborhood adjacent to the waterfront, and my next steps towards destiny. I must find Sister Vashti's house. And the dark things seemed turned about. I needed a moment to calm my racing heart and get my bearings. But time and the sudden clip-clop of horses' hooves behind me allowed no such luxury. I couldn't spare even a moment to turn around and face my possible pursuers, or determine if my absence had been discovered and Mistress had sent the authorities to reclaim me. Knowing the slightest delay might mean a return to captivity, I lifted the hem of my dress and ran, the hood of my cloak streaming behind me. Haste was imperative, for I was a lady's maid once bound to the president's house, and I had dared to flee. I was the one who'd slipped away unnoticed and was determined to be free, even if it meant I lost my life while trying.
1. Tessa Scott. Current day Chincoteague, Virginia. It won't take but a minute, baby. I merely want you to see the current state of what you're working with. It was Friday evening. Sheets of rain and the typical influx of weekenders flocking to the island had turned I-13 into an impossibly wet mess of a logjam. I was behind schedule, at risk of being late, and Dominic, who detested tardiness, expected me back on the mainland. The gentle rebuke I'd earned earlier from my mother had me guilt-tripping over my irregular attendance at family dinners. Even worse, my period was late, and my nerves were on edge. Still, I gave Mama Calloway the only response you can give an 84-year-old woman who'd known you all your 29 years and supplied you with abundant love, hugs, homemade cobblers, cakes, cookies, and pies. Yes, ma'am. Damn. God knew I didn't have time for scoping out an empty, antiquated house in Chincoteague. The house hadn't been lived in years and had seen better days. Yet, it was a gem as far as Mama Calloway was concerned. I should have been northbound, heading in the opposite direction towards Virginia Beach. Instead, I'd left my family's century-old Victorian on the banks of Cape Charles to slowly inch my way south to that island town famous for its wild ponies. All because I couldn't deny Mama Calloway a thing. I'll be there as soon as traffic lets up. Sounds good to me. I made pecan pralines yesterday. They'll be waiting. At 5'8", I weighed 155, wore a size 10, and considered my weight nicely distributed. My partner, Dominic Daniels IV, didn't wholeheartedly share my opinion and had anointed himself my personal food police. Despite claiming he liked my curves, Dominic consistently treated me to his exercise and fitness sermons as if I were lazy or ignorant. Dude was anal enough to comment if my breath or kiss